Hello and welcome to Understanding ACE Accreditation, brought to you by Bishop Mackenzie International School. This segment is relevant for the school leadership who are looking to prepare the documentation in the build-up for a learning principles visit. Now, as a leadership team, you may be wondering what is the most efficient way to go through the process of a learning principles preparation. For us, we had spent some time in the leadership team looking at the learning principles and how philosophically we felt aligned with the ACE protocol. We'd had a couple of board meetings again where we looked at the ACE protocol and how it was different to the previous 8th edition. And with staff, we had taken the opportunity during a couple of meetings to keep them up to date with the changes to the ACE accreditation model. The way in which you deal with a learning principles visit for ACE is somewhat different to the way you would prepare for a full accreditation visit. For a learning principles visit, you need to report on the A, the C and the E as an overview of each of those. So although the A, Architecture for Learning, has got 4 learning principles, rather than reporting on each of those 4 discretely, the report submitted for a learning principles visit would be a synthesis, an overview, if you like, of those 4 learning principles that fall under A, Architecture for Learning. Equally, there will be one report for C, the Culture of Learning, that takes cognizance of the 4 learning principles that fall under that. And one report again for E, Ecology of Learning, that takes reference to the 2 learning principles under the E section. So for a learning principles visit, you just have 3 reports to write. Now for a full accreditation visit, that's where you would need to have documentation for each of the discrete learning principles, so you would have 10 reports. And in that process, you would want to bring the 4 A's together as a committee to discuss where there's opportunities and synergy between the 4 discrete reports under Architecture for Learning. Equally, the 4 C committees, they've all produced their separate reports, but you would want to create an opportunity for them to come together somehow to look for any similarities, overlap between the 4 C reports and equally the 2 E reports. Now, when it comes to finding artifacts and evidence that's going to be submitted, those 4 A reports are likely to have very similar documentation that's uploaded, which would seem to be a little bit overkill. So the idea of bringing your 4 committees together is that you can prioritize what the most relevant information and artifacts would be to support the documentation. And again, you can look for synergy, you can look for opportunities for development around the general theme of Architecture for Learning or Culture for Learning or Ecology for Learning.
I think the meetings themselves provided the platform and the ideas, and it is good, and I think it proved to be good that people went off with an idea then that, oh, that's the meeting finished. No, I could find some evidence for that bit that we talked about, and I think before the next meeting you found there was an awful lot of material that had been gathered by people who were interested in what they were doing. And yeah, I think the time after a meeting was beneficial for people to collect evidence and put together. It meant the meeting was more meaningful too, because you weren't just collecting evidence during meetings.
We actually set up a couple of meetings. So the second meeting was a few weeks later, which gave time in between the meetings for staff to reflect more deeply about the impact of learning and the impact of the ACE accreditation on transforming the school. And it also gave the staff an opportunity to collate information, documents, photographs, videos that would exemplify what they're doing around the school. Each of the committees was given a Google Doc template with a relevant learning principle, along with questions that were taken from the rubric to help guide the discussions. and we set up an associated Google Drive folder so that any information or documents could be dropped into that folder for collation with the report.
I think that platform using Google Docs, Google Drive, was very beneficial to us because we were all in the same room with our laptops. We were able to look at what we were inputting to our report, and we were able to discuss things and look at evidence that we were putting in. It was a good way of filtering evidence, because some people, we would put the same evidence, but we realised that perhaps it's not as relevant for what I'm doing as for what you're doing. The discussion that went on was really good for all of us. We were able to look at the different parts that people were involved in and comment, and sometimes it wasn't an area that you were an expert in, but you were able to offer suggestions. And I think just for proofreading as well, it was excellent. Yeah, it was a good way of working.
Once the committees had met, the leadership team over the next few weeks then checked the CIS and NEASC portals, keeping track of progress using Google Docs. Over the weeks leading up to the submission of the reports, the leadership group had the opportunity to do final checks and make any necessary changes. Finalizing reports by answering the where do we want to be and what will we be looking for.
We would sit in the same room, all editing the same document simultaneously, but using the face-to-face time to ask questions and challenge assumptions, etc. I mean, Google Docs is brilliant to allow this collaboration from a distance, but there were certainly enormous benefits for us to have everyone in the same room, looking at the same document and editing simultaneously, discussing it real time. It was far more engaging and efficient than somebody making notes and then making changes and circulating it for comments after that.
The final editing, well, I wouldn't call it onerous. It was time consuming, but it was incredibly interesting to find all the stuff that they'd pulled together. And because we were working as a team to do that, we were able to add things to it as well. They'd put a lot of work into it, but I didn't find it, I don't think any of us found it an onerous task. It was interesting to see it all being pulled together.
For example, we had teachers who were very passionate about areas around learning space and time, which led to some valuable contributions. The Google approach, however, allowed me as a head to view ideas and often see possibilities for development. For example, the idea of building a language lab in secondary was put forward, and we'll be completing that project in the coming year. On the other hand, it also gave me the opportunity to explain to teachers why certain ideas that had been put forward may not be possible due to restrictions they may not be aware of. For example, timetabling constraints, required hours for the IB diploma, affecting how long lessons are, or how long our recesses can be.
Now, another aspect of the accreditation process was to engage the board and keep them informed about the process and their obligations. I know there are several types of boards and they operate in different ways, but I think I'm quite fortunate in that our board, which is comprised of 9 elected parents, has a monthly meeting and they're quite relaxed. Since accreditation is an ongoing process of reflection and development for us, we've had several meetings where the focus has been to look at standards and learning principles. And we've done this in various ways, having information about the learning principles, for example, on large posters that we put up in different parts of the library or whatever, and then we walk around and gather around a poster to discuss it and to dive deeper into the meaning of it.
Our board meetings prepare the board, I think, very well for any events that are going to happen in school. It's always an agenda item for 2 or 3 meetings before. And having monthly meetings, that means 2 or 3 months ahead of the actual process. The board are informed and given information. And as the visit became closer, they were given information about what we had prepared for the visit and what their contribution would be. And I think that was done in a timely fashion, and I think they delivered their part of it. They were well prepared and knew what was expected of them when the visitors came.